So the topic is
What's today's topic?
networking like a gentleman.
Oh, good one.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it.
There's a lot of things, as you know, to do with networking, communication, posture, gentleman etiquette, how to treat other people. What would be, let's just say a situation, you meet up with somebody, let's just say a billionaire. Maybe
Yeah.
he's Australian, maybe you have a story about that. And what would be your best way of approaching it and how to, become friends with that person and make him trust you?
Well, I think one of the most important things that people forget about networking, they look at networking outwardly, like what they're going to say or do to a person to impress them. But I think the best way that you can impress a person, particularly from the beginning, is by showing them how much you respect yourself. And so that starts at the very baseline of everything that we generally talk about in this space, which is getting yourself in shape, respecting your body, and respecting your appearance. Image is very important in networking because you're training someone else on how to treat you and evaluate you based off the way you treat and love yourself. So if you take care of your body, it shows that you take yourself seriously, so much so that you take care of yourself on a very high level. Then from there, how you dress yourself personifies outwardly the way that you respect yourself. So having nice clothes to wear, being groomed correctly, being clean in your appearance is very, very important. And when it comes to networking, that's going to be the first thing that people see. And as you know, and most people know, it's a very common thing that is said, is you cannot redo a first impression. From there, you can go from your presentation of yourself and how you show love to yourself, which other people feel the need to match just naturally. Because a lot of people are way more insecure than you believe. Every person has insecurities, even a billionaire. So if you walk onto a boat and you stand up straight and you're in good shape and you've dressed well, then he's automatically going to think this person obviously knows something about himself that allows him to personify a higher level of themselves as an individual. So when I walk into a room and I'm standing tall and my chest is out and I'm slim and I'm in good shape and I'm dressed well, it tells other people that I respect myself enough to care for myself and that I think I'm valuable enough to dress this way, to walk in a room this way. So that's the first thing. It comes from you. Secondly, your ability to look a man in the eye and shake his hand with a firm handshake and keep eye contact. A lot of guys you'll talk to, I talk to guys all the time, especially like if I get stopped for a photo or something like that. Sometimes I notice that they can't look me in the eyes for very long, or they want to look down. When you believe in yourself, when you're confident, when you're not a snake, when you know who you are, when you are truly there locked in with a person, you keep eye contact. Now, it's not the weird kind of like never blinking, but you're there with them and you're able to keep eye contact. I think that's very important to build trust. Because most of the time, if somebody can't keep eye contact with you, there's something aloof in the situation. So keeping eye contact is very important. One thing I also like to do when it comes to somebody of really high net worth is to just treat them like a person. If you can forget about the amount of money they make, if you can forget about who they are supposedly are, and just treat them like a normal human being and not put them on such as high pedestal, then you, unlike most people that do put them on a high pedestal, are training them to believe that you are some way peers on some level. Even if they know that you're not at the same status or financial position as they are. If you can look them in the eye, you're letting them know that you're well on your way and that you deserve to be in that group of people that are looked at in the way that that individual is looked at. So when I meet very, very high level people or people that have done more in their life than I have, for example, I make a very purposeful, intentional point to treat them like a normal person, like we're friends, not like I'm putting them on some pedestal. You do it respectfully, but you do it in a way that lets them know that you can be present with them and that the event of meeting them is not too large for you. And that's very, very important, particularly when I meet famous people all the time. Famous people, right? They are people. They put their pants on like me, and whether they're ahead of me or behind me, or we're at the same place, it doesn't matter. Because you have to treat them like a peer And that trains them to understand that you deserve to be in that room speaking to them. So that's the first thing. When it comes to them outwardly, I like to almost interview them. I want to know everything about them. And I listen very, very intently to the words they're saying. I like to ask them about their story. I like to compliment them on things that they worked hard at. And I like to continue to dig and dig and dig into the things that make them who they are. So I'll give you an example. Let's say I'm on a yacht with a guy. And I'm like, I love your yacht. It's beautiful. How did you make the money? Or what business? How did you get into it? How did you find yourself here? I'll sit there with that man for an hour and not say a thing back to him about the wonderful things that I've done in my life. I'll make it completely about him, hearing his story. I'll stop him. I'm like, wait. So you got there, but before you got there, what was this, and this to get you in this position? I missed that. Like, I don't understand how you went from point A to point B. And then they backtrack, and then the story goes deeper. And then it often leads into what their struggles were, how they went through trials and tribulations in their business. It humanizes them in a way that allows you to have a personal moment with them inside of a struggle. And you can say, hey, I understand where you're coming from. I've had things like that happen too. What did you do about this? Then you can start digging into questions on how you can learn from them. So you're letting them take you on this path of journey of the person that they become, which, by the way, people love at all levels of life to talk about themselves. Make it about them. Be genuinely interested, not just because you're trying to get somewhere with that person, because you're genuinely trying to get to know them. And that's how a bond happens. And so if you can go from the small talk subjects of, hey, how was your day? Nice boat. Oh, isn't it pretty outside? To tell me about how you got here. Wait, back up. Tell me how you got started. I know that you had this business, you exited it for $100 million. That's great. But tell me about how you built it. What were your trials? How old were you? What did you run into? How'd you get the loan from the bank? Who's your main employee that you had to win over in order to get your business in a position to really go to the moon? How'd you scale? Did you ever almost lose it? What were the things? Give me the struggles in that. And that's when a conversation can get intimate. And if you can make a conversation intimate and you can find the things that they went through, then you can actually give them a compliment, a real compliment on something that they worked hard to achieve. I often say about compliments is you should never give somebody a compliment on something that was given to them naturally. You should give it to them on something that they built themselves around, something that they had to strive for to actually earn, to be in a position to earn the compliment. I'll give you an example. Let's say you're talking to a beautiful woman. She was probably born naturally beautiful, but if she works out and she's built her body up and her legs and her butt and everything about it, like she's in really good physical condition, she had to work for that. Instead of just saying, oh, you're beautiful, I would say to her, hey, I can tell you work really, really hard on your body and your physique and taking care of yourself. That's really cool. Good for you. Congratulations. Not hitting on her, giving her a genuine compliment like I'd give just another guy and another human. So I think it's really important to remember those things about everybody, no matter where they are in life, is that if you can treat them like a regular human being, give them genuine compliments, and try to genuinely get to know them, not just for their victories, but for their struggles along the way, you'll go quite far with somebody in just a few hours if you need to. And when it comes to networking, I think that's one of the best things you can possibly do.
I know you talk a lot about being unapologetic for who you are. And I want to know more on how that plays into actually networking and somebody and two people understanding each other.
Yeah, so what you have to understand about life is that if you're not living your life truly how you feel, you will come off at some point disingenuous. You'll come off as a snake oil salesman. You'll come off as a person that's trying to make other people happy. I don't want anybody in my life that does not accept me for exactly who I am. Because if I have to be somebody I'm not in order to make somebody like me, then I'm just holding my breath. A lot of the reason that we get stopped on the street so much, or that we're able to connect with people so much, is because oftentimes I'll take daggers in my back to say things that other people are not willing to say. And I would much rather have 2 million people on this planet love me and 6 billion people hate me than to be something I'm not and have to hold my breath in my life. It is my life. And most people can admire and respect somebody, even when they disagree with them, for living their actual truth, because they know how rare it is. So for me, I don't count the number of people that hate me. I count the number of people that love me for who I actually am. And I'm not ashamed of that. Next question.
This may be more of a specific one,
All right, shoot.
tailored to networking.
Do it.
And you talked about looking people in the eye.
Yeah.
Is there a certain way that you should carry yourself when at a table with somebody? Let's just say posture-wise, or where you put your hands, how you hold your hands, those kind of specifics. Does that play into like the overall, like kind of how a person perceives you, where they hold their hands, what kind of posture they have? Do like you said with the eye contact and all that stuff.
Posture is very important. I do make a point to try to show my hands at all times. If I'm sitting at a table, you won't often see my hands under the table. My hands will be on the table. It's kind of a sign of trust. And in many ways, it's probably quite primal. One thing that I do pay attention to at a table, particularly when it's not my table, like today when I took you guys to lunch, I sat at the head of the table, but you motherfuckers knew who was paying the bill, right? If I go sit at another man's table, particularly if his wife or his girlfriend or his girlfriends are going to be there, I don't do the big league shit of going off and paying the bill behind his back. I let him be the center of attention, as he should be. It's his table. He invited me to his dinner. I'm sitting at his table, eating his meal. I will offer to help to pay. He's not going to let me, and I'm not going to fight him, particularly when his woman is around. That is a game we don't play. I'll give you a great example. I was with How to Beast in Spain, and I spent the day with him, and we met up with Sterling, and Thomas was with us. And normally, if it would have just been me, Sterling, David, I would have slipped off like I was going to the bathroom. I would have paid the bill. And then they would have tried to do the same thing to me, or at least Sterling would have, because that's the game we all play. And I'd have been like, got you, you're too slow. But in that situation, when I'd been with the man who has a substantially larger platform than me, over 1 million subs, when I had like 200,000 subs, I'm with his wife and our other friend. I'm not going to try to do something to make it look like I big league the table when his wife is around. Sweet lady, very nice girl. David is awesome. I'd hang out with David anytime, any place. One of my favorite people I've met on my journey of doing content. And I thought to myself, I could go pay this bill right now, but David has been the center point of this day, doing content with him, going on his blog, his channel, which is a very large channel, which he worked very hard for. There's no way I'm going to go big league and pay this bill. I'm going to ask to split it and be a gentleman. I know he's going to tell me no, and I would have happily split the bill with him, but I knew he wasn't going to do it, and I let him pay the bill. So I think that's one thing that you should always take into consideration is, whose table is this? Who is the focal point of attention? Whose event is this? I wouldn't go to one of Michael Sartain's events and try to take the mic from him when he's running his big bikini show. I'm there as a guest, and I'm going to act as a guest. And I'm going to do that in the most, not only gentleman, but graceful way possible. You want to be there to extend any help that is needed, but you don't want to outshine the master at any table, any event, or any social gathering when somebody else has put that event together. I wouldn't go to one of George Gammon's events and Ken McElroy, and let's say we were at a Rebel Capitalist event. I wouldn't try to strut around there like it was my event and people were there to see me. They're there to see George. They're there to see Ken. They're there to see Jason Hartman. I'm simply there as their friend. So when I go in the green room backstage and I'm mingling around, I'm networking with people, but I don't walk out in front of all the people that paid there to get to see him, because I know he's the star of that show. I do believe that's the first law in the 48 Laws of Power, is don't outshine the master. Even if you are the brightest light in the room, you have to understand whose room you're in. And you have to show that respect. Because when you can show that respect, that person now can trust you to have you at his event again. And then he can also trust you to connect you with the next person that you need to meet in your journey of networking and doing business with people all over the world. So I think it's very important to show respect, not only just to the event, not only just to show up and be kind to everyone, but understand whose event it is and your place in that ecosystem. Because if you can do that, you can be trusted to go into other ecosystems and not think that you're the star of the show. You don't want to be arrogant. You want to be grateful and you want to be graceful. One thing that I think people make major mistakes is they meet a person and they get straight to the goal or the thing that they're after. I like to build relationships with people in which when I walk away, they feel like there was a genuine connection between themselves and I. And if I can get there and see them enough times and they can trust that I am in the relationship because I genuinely like the person, then it becomes their idea that we should do something together. Or it becomes their idea to introduce me to somebody that they know that all three of us could do business together somehow. I'll give you a great example. I saw a guy last night, Benjamin. He's got a huge channel on YouTube. I met him, the first time I met him was in Medellin, Colombia. We did a event out there. I saw him last night walking into Fresh and Fit. We took a photo together and I invited him to lunch today. I did not know that he knew the individual that he is going to be getting me together with. I can tell you this individual I've been watching for years. He has 7 million subs on YouTube. And now he's going to connect us. I didn't invite him to lunch so I could get that contact because I didn't even know he had the contact. But it happened naturally because I cared about Benjamin. And so what's important to understand about networking in general is that you should look at it more as planting a bunch of seeds that you're going to water again and again and again until something naturally, organically happens. You never want to go into a relationship saying, I want this friendship only because I'm going to get this certain thing. Well, that's bullshit. Maybe there's a connection I could have gave him that will help him in his career. And then maybe 3 years from now, he's going to think of something that'll help me. He won't forget the seed that I planted for him and that I watered the relationship for us. And in turn, just something naturally will happen from it. It could be something small. It could be something big. It could be something small between he and I that gets me to a relationship where 2 meetings in, something big happens. So it's very important to be genuine in your interactions with people and be there truly for them because anything that's going to happen good is going to happen organically anyway. So there's never a need to force it. Do your best to learn as much as you can about the person while you're asking them those questions. Do your best to be there with that person and learn everything about them because it just might be your interest in their life that opens up the door to what you could possibly do together. So while I am genuinely interested in everything about that individual's career, I'm also learning every way that we could possibly down the road do business together. Because I'm seeing all the things that he has and I'm matching it against the things that I have in hopes that our friendship can create a bond that'll make money. I often say I don't want to be friends with you unless we can make money. But I do believe that learning about someone, digging into their life, genuinely caring about what it took for them to get in the position that they're in is the best way to make that happen. And I think you can do that genuinely and hat in hand, very honestly. And so I learn from situations where I can ask somebody tons and tons of questions about their business and we might not ever do business together, but I can often walk away from that a better man. And then in the future, it will just so happen to come up that there is a way to utilize that for both of our mutual benefits. And so like when I'm talking about networking or doing business deals with people, I don't ever want to do a deal where it's not good for both parties. But the best way to be able to find the way to do business together is find out the most about each other. And mean that truly, intentfully. You know, there's nothing wrong with genuine interest, even if there's nothing to gain, because you're just sharpening your sword of networking in the first place. And you're giving that person real attention in real time. It's very rare for an individual, especially a high net worth individual, to have someone sit with them, ask some genuine questions about themselves, really care about it, and then shake their hand and say, I've really enjoyed this time with you, and then just walk away. Very rare. They're so used to somebody saying on the first meeting or the first DM they ever get, I want to do this. Would you want to do a business with me? He's heard that 30 times a day. Be a person that cares about the individual, and anything that's going to organically happen will happen, and it will often be their idea. Because you were the rare individual that cared about them to the point where you were willing to talk about them and learn about them and go through the navigation of what it took for them to become who they are and not ask for anything in return. Just genuinely ask and have intentful conversation with the person about themselves. That's not against the rules. In fact, I think it's the best way to network on the planet. I don't think there's a better way.
So with networking, usually for other people to respect you, you need to build yourself up and become the kind of man people can...
You need to be able to walk in the room, and the room is never too big for you. I never walk in a room that is too big for me. I never shake a hand that I don't feel like I deserve to be shaking. I walk in that room, and I respectfully am big enough to be in that room, and I respectfully am big enough to be in that conversation with that individual. And there's a way of showing that, which is an internal confidence that's not arrogant. It's just simply in your body language, your tone, and how you speak to them like a normal person. Treat them like a peer that you're interested in, not like a god you're trying to reach. It changes it. It doesn't change it just for you. It changes it for them, their perception of you. You are subconsciously telling them, I deserve to be in this conversation with you. I deserve to be in this room with you. I deserve to be standing here talking to you. And my eye contact, my posture, and my intention with you is showing you that. So I don't need to tell you. Again, it makes it their idea.
Right. And usually in networking, you need to have money somehow. You need to have money before you can start to look up for all of these kind of networks. And does that play a key role in your personal way of networking? Like, let's just say, for example, for you, did you start meeting all these kind of people before you had money or before you had any kind of,
No, and actually I disagree about the money thing. I don't think you need money to network. I think you need to show that you respect yourself, that you take care of yourself. You walk in a room and you deserve to be in that conversation. You're never going to walk into a networking situation and then I'm going to ask you what your net worth is. They're going to look at you and you're going to tell them what your worth is via how you interact with them and how you've displayed yourself. That's what's going to get you in a networking situation, not the money in your bank account. That's what I like about the online school. You can start a small business, start to make money, start to have employees, and then when you're digging into a conversation with somebody that's done something at a very high level, you can stop and ask them, hey, in my business, I've run into this, this, and this. How did you handle that along your journey? Then you both can share and have rapport around sometimes it's hard to manage employees. So it's finding common ground. And the online school really teaches people how to break their teeth and get into that first business. And what's interesting about business is that any person on the planet, whether they're worth $1 million or 150 million, started probably one employee at some point. So if you can have that under your belt, there's one more thing that you can talk about that will build rapport between you and him because he remembers being where you are. And that's another thing about older gentlemen. Something I did a lot in construction is when they start to see themselves in you, you are winning in the conversation. You're winning in the networking. Because it's very rarely that I meet an individual that's older than me and we talk about the things that I've gone through, which they have also gone through at some point, and them not to start to pull for me or say, hey, I like this young man. I think to myself, I remember that. And I know what he's going through. And I want to see the kid win. And guess what happens? It becomes my idea to help him. And that's when I know that he has been successful in networking with me. Let's go.
Why do certain personality types do better in life?
I think certain energies do better in certain positions. Personality types, I don't know how real they are. I think what happens is that people either don't develop themselves to put themselves in a position of being confident when they walk in a room. Most of the time when you are confident with yourself, you're going to tend to be more outgoing. And when you're more outgoing, you can strike up more conversations. When you can tune in and start listening to people and make conversations more about them, because you're more outgoing and you're confident in yourself and you don't feel the need to fire back about what makes you awesome, if you can keep it about them because you know who you are and you're comfortable with yourself, then I think it lends itself to more success in business because you're already confident and you're confident sitting inside the frame of whatever it is in their life that they have to tell you that's positive. And most people are only going to tell you positive things about them. If you're okay with that and you're confident in yourself because you've built yourself up to sit inside their greatness, then you're going to do really well in life. But I don't know if that's more about personalities or the work that you've done on yourself to feel like you deserve to be in that room.
Mm-hmm. Next one. Why is it important to be selective of who you hang around?
Because who you hang around is how you're going to get looked at by the world. And that's whether people love you or hate you. Like I said before, I'd rather have 2 million people that love me and 6 million people that hate me, because it's not about the people that hate you in this world. It's about the people that truly love you for who you are. And when you choose your friends, you're going to get associated to that love and that hate. Make sure the person that you choose to associate with is worth both the love and the hate. And I feel like I've done a great job of that in my life because I love the people that have given me that association. And I can only count that in the scorebook of my own life and my own heart. So the people I chose, I'm authentically choosing them because they align with me and who I am. And for that reason, I never regret it ever.
Next one. What mindset shift should a man adopt when going out into the world?
He should first accept that life is not fair. He should accept that it's going to take him a little bit longer than he thinks it is, so he better get to work immediately. He should ultimately accept that everything that happens to him is his fault. And if he refuses to accept that, regardless of other people's actions, then he is going to be at the will of another man at all times. There's plenty of times in my life where I watched somebody that I made an agreement with, particularly employees, go outside of that agreement. But if I were to give them the power of me believing that it wasn't on me and I was not the sole root of the problem, i.e. picking a different person, then I would be at the mercy of another man's actions. And that takes the ball out of my hands in the game that is my life. I want the ball in my life. I believe that if I pass the ball to somebody else and they don't take the shot or they miss the shot, then I should have passed it to somebody else or I should have took the shot myself. But that gives me ultimate power in my life. It gives me the power of decision, the power of choice, and it gives me hope that I can change and create the life that I want for myself, all solely on my back. And at the end of the day, you have to answer to the man in the mirror. And if you can't get yourself in a position to trust that person completely, then you're missing a competency, which is good news because you know exactly what to work on. It's always on you. Always.
When should people start worrying about taxes? And let's just frame this in the way, I got a job, I'm out of college, I make something amount of money a year. What's the whole tax thing? Like, I'm new to it.
Cool. I think a really great book to read would be Rich Dad Poor Dad. And the reason I like that book so much is because if you look at it from the perspective of understanding where you are in the food chain, whether you employ a solopreneur, you own a business or a corporation, whether you're the investor or the guy swinging the hammer, when it comes to taxes, you have to understand if you're the guy swinging the hammer, you're going to get maximum tax breaks anyway. Once you start to get in middle class is when you start paying the most in taxes. And when you can get to the point that you're making enough money that the taxes actually hit you, you're going to start to realize very quickly that you're going to have to find ways around that. I don't think there's a point where you can say, hey, it's time to study taxes. I think it's something that you should know about all the way along the ride. I think what's more important is understanding where you are in the food chain. There were times where I'd get really excited about the fact that I was going to make $50,000 or $100,000 on a project. But then once I did enough projects and made that money, I realized that the guy that was investing in the property that hired the company that hired me was actually the one making the big money. He was getting the depreciation on the building that I was building for the general contractor. I started to understand food chain. And what you have to understand about that particular situation, I'm building a building. I'll make $100,000 on the job. I'm going to have a certain amount of taxes that I'm going to pay. That gentleman might not pay taxes on that property when he depreciates it, and he gets cash flow, and he gets appreciation. So understanding where you are in the food chain and how all the different players pay taxes across that entire food chain will tell you what you need to know about taxes. Also having a good CPA and understanding how taxes work is going to be really important. But I don't think there's any point in the game where you shouldn't be studying financial literacy completely, including taxes. But what will put it in perspective for you is understanding where you are in the food chain of your particular situation, how you can get up it, and how the guy at the top of it is getting his tax breaks. Because that's going to give you the information you need to know where you need to go and how you can get successful. The middle class pays most of the taxes. You can't forget that. So you need to find a way to get to the part of the food chain where you are not liable for those taxes in the way that the guy in the middle, because the middle class is the people that are really getting squeezed. You have poor people that get government handouts. Then you have rich people that figure out the game. Those people are the ones that are best off. The people in the middle that are working really, really hard, they get hit the hardest. And so there's no point when you shouldn't be studying taxes. But first, you need to know where you are in the pecking order of taxes as a whole and what you do.
Perfect. And when talking about money and taxes and all that kind of stuff, what's the best way to handle debt when you've accumulated a lot of it?
Well, there's good debt and bad debt. I have millions of dollars of debt in my real estate portfolio. But that debt pays me. And what you have to understand about debt, particularly debt that has interest, is you can write the interest off. And so it goes back to what is an asset and what's a liability. I don't mind having debt on an asset. For example, let's say I have well over 20 million in real estate in my portfolio. I owe quite a bit of money on that debt, but that debt pays me a profit. It's because of the debt that I can make the profit. Then I can write off the cost of the money, which is the interest, I guess, on my taxes. All the while, my net worth grows year after year after year after year as the property goes up in value and as the rents go up. But I bought it for the same price. So when it comes to debt, you need to understand that an asset is something that makes you money. A liability is something that costs you money. A great example of that would be my Lamborghini. That car is not an asset. That car is $6,000-$7,000 a month, I guess, by the time I pay my interest and everything on it. It does not pay me money. If I rented that car and I made $10,000 a month and the note was $7,000, then it would certainly be an asset. But until it gives me profit, it's a liability. So that's one thing that people don't understand is assets and liabilities. Debt is not a bad word. Is the debt profitable? That's what's important. Credit card debt, particularly when you first get started at high interest rates, is certainly a liability. And I honestly think it should be illegal to bill people massive amounts of debt because they're in a horrible financial position. I really do think it's a shark thing to do. You'll see a lot of payday loans places and they're 25-30% of the people never pay it off. And they'll chase them and chase them and chase them until they take everything they own. It's a shark type business. And so one thing I would tell a young man is to pay attention to the terms on the debt that you get. You buy a used car, cool. What is the interest rate? Find out. Because it's going to be very important because you might be paying 20-something% interest on a truck note that you think is $1,000 when only $300 of that is going to principal. And that, my friend, is not an asset. You're not making money off of that truck unless it's a dump truck or something in a business. So you need to understand the difference between an asset and a liability and then look at the cost of the money on the asset that you're buying and make sure that it also makes sense in the equation of you owning the asset. And anything that you're paying an exorbitant amount of interest on, debt, and it's not an asset is definitely a no. So you shouldn't be buying anything you can't afford. And if you are buying something that you can't afford cash, make sure it's an asset, not a liability.
I heard it's super vital to understand accounting when building or starting or scaling a business. Is that true?
Well, what's really true about accounting is you might not understand debits and credits in the beginning. You might not fully understand a balance sheet in the beginning. P&Ls are pretty straightforward. But what's really important about needing accounting, needing a solid set of books, is because as a business owner, you should be measuring everything and you should truly know your numbers. And I'm not saying anything groundbreaking here, but if you don't know your numbers, you don't know how to move the dial. So accounting is a way of tracking historically what happened, even if it's just last month. What were all the transactions in the business that led us to get to the point where we made this amount of money or didn't make this amount of money? And so if you can look back at that historical data of accounting, then you know what to do in the future to become more and more profitable as the months go by. So you don't have to be an accountant, although I do think that's a good thing to study. I think it's more about knowing your numbers so you can make really good decisions in your business. Having good numbers can make business quite simple sometimes, because when you have really good books and accounting and tracking of what the costs were, the decisions themselves are no-brainers if you have common sense. So having a clean set of books and an accounting, that is what allows you to make those easy decisions. But your books have to be right first. So you need someone that does understand accounting, and you need to be reading those reports and asking questions.
When talking about money and all this stuff, like we've been talking, is it important to save money in like your bank account and keep it there, or, in checking or something, or just spend it?
I know there's a lot of people that say, have a year's worth or 6 months worth. I'm cool with that. And maybe you can put it in a money market account, something that's liquid that you can get to. But I also believe that, cash is trash. You hear people say that all the time. I agree with that. And the reason I agree with it is because you want to put the money to work. Money is nothing but stored energy of human energy. Money is nothing more than human energy stored. So if you can put a bunch of people to work and you can bring a bunch of money into account, then instead of putting those, you keep those people working, but now you have all this stored energy that you could put into something else like an asset that would allow you put that money to work. And you can trust money to work because it's just money. It doesn't have a wife. It doesn't have kids. It doesn't get drunk. You can put it in the market. You can put it in a real estate deal. You can reinvest it in a business. You can do all these things to put money to work. And then you start to get to a point where you can leverage. I also like to take money and just hire the next superstar in my business. I look at hiring an individual and I say, okay, well, if they're going to cost me $100,000 a year, what is the net profit if they do a good job at the position I put them in? So I take that money, that stored energy from something else that I did or someone else did that I leveraged, and maybe put it into an individual. That individual, if a good employee, is an asset just as much as buying a real estate property. So it's like the money I put into you guys to build this business. I made money. I pay you. You're an asset. We continue to grow. And so that pot of money gets bigger. And then I take that money and I reinvest it again, and it starts to snowball. Or I take the money that we made online and I put it into a real estate property. Now, those 308 people are getting up and going to work every day. Somebody else is having to manage them and their jobs, but I'm getting about 25% of their income without having to deal with them in whatever job that they have. So I don't personally like to sit on a whole bunch of cash because of inflation. I want to put my money into something that's going to grow up and with inflation. And that's why I like real estate so much. And it's also why I like businesses. I think businesses are one of the most explosive investments you could possibly make. And then people. I don't know that there's a better investment than people, because people can be a part of a business that can blow up overnight and you're doing millions in revenue. So I don't particularly like to let money sit still. You want to pay attention to manage money. Another thing about money that sits in bank accounts, if money just sits in a bank account with no intention, you'll find that it slowly, gradually deplenishes because you'll just spend it on something. So there's also that to think about. Money needs to be managed.
Now, with a completely no money, no taxes, nothing to do with that,
Okay.
is getting a girlfriend in your 20s going to hold you back from achieving your full potential?
Not necessarily. It could be the thing that makes you grounded. You know, I think that your 20s are a very important time to study female nature. I don't think that you're going to develop as a man completely if you go get married early. I know there's people that disagree with that. I can see where some guys think if you get married, you think you have this certain mission. But I never needed a woman to have that discipline, and I didn't need the distraction. I had long-term girlfriends in my 20s, and I think those girlfriends were good for me at those times because it stopped me from going out and chasing a bunch of women. I had like a solid, go home, you got the sex, you got the food. It's kind of boring, but you need to be boring in certain periods of your life. So if you're going through this spot in your 20s where you're kind of in monk mode and you have a good relationship with a girl that's actually healthy, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I just not a big fan of getting married in your 20s because you don't know the man you're going to become yet. So as some guys are what they would call successful in their 20s, if they give too much of that attention and that life energy to a woman that they may or may not be with forever, then that man, even though he might do great things, maybe he could have done more. It's not that I have anything against the relationship itself. It's really just about reaching the full potential. And I think that's different for every person. So I also will go and say that I don't think chasing women and having multiple women in your 20s is a very good idea either. It's just about the energy consumption when you could be working on the man you're going to become. That's what's most important to me.
What do you think most young guys are lacking personality-wise?
Well, I think with every generation, there's a new set of obstacles and opportunities. So for young men today, I don't think they do as well in real life relationships because most of their interaction now is going to be online. And I think that's a disadvantage, but that also comes with the advantage of being able to do a lot bigger things and scale out and touch a lot more people because of the internet. So I think that any young man today should just make sure, do a personal check-in with himself to see if he has enough real life interaction in real business, real relationships, real people, just to ensure that he's not over digitized in the way that he communicates with the world. And if he can check in with himself and make sure that he has strong personal relationships that are in person, then it doesn't have to be a negative thing.
And final one here. Do you believe in the whole concept of extrovert, introvert, in that whole kind of
Not
paradigm?
particularly. I think that any person can work on himself enough to be able to have a decent conversation with anyone. I think the more confident you are in yourself, the more that you'll flourish. So again, if you're in the proper physical condition, if you have treated your body and your mind correctly and you dress a certain way and you're confident in who you are, it'll allow you to walk into a room with a completely different ambiance about yourself. And I think that confidence comes off of you and it allows you to open up to conversations and be confident in those conversations. And I think that a lot of people that are introverted aren't completely comfortable with who they are. And I think for that reason, they call themselves introverted, but really they're just not completely comfortable with that interaction. So gentlemen, I've really enjoyed this conversation. If some of you young guys are looking for a place where you can find other like-minded people to build that confidence, to build that business, to build yourself up, to be able to walk in a room and network at people at the highest level, I advise that you join the online school. There's a link in the description below. I look forward to seeing you in there and to seeing you all flourish in 2024. See you inside.